I want to talk a little bit about active sources in this video. So there are two kind of sources, independent and dependent sources. So independent, and then we can classify them like that. And independent sources, there are two kind, voltage sources and current sources, and I will come to dependent sources in a minute. So let's first talk about independent sources. Voltage source is an element which maintains a constant voltage irrespective of whatever is connected with it. So it is like this. Sometimes it's designated like this, and sometimes like this. This is more like a DC source. When it's a DC source, this is designated like that, and AC source sometimes designated like this, sometimes without the sign like that. So its characteristics is it maintains a constant voltage across its terminal, which is these two, irrespective of whatever is connected to it. It doesn't matter. And usually a source has an internal resistance. So when we draw a source, or when we draw a source in a circuit, I will draw a DC source, the internal resistance is drawn separately. So this is the source resistance, it's called, and this is V. So this is the source, these are the source terminals. So whatever is connected to it, it will maintain this constant voltage, let's say V here. And even if these two terminals are short circuited, the current will be defined by this RS, and the voltage here will still remain V. So that's what a voltage source is. Similarly, a current source is something that maintains a constant current. Constant means time dependent or DC. That current doesn't change irrespective of whatever is connected across its terminals. So here again, like voltage source, current source also has an internal resistance, and that resistance is usually drawn as a parallel with it. So that means even if a current source is kept open, the current through the terminals, through the terminal of the source, is maintained, and by allowing the current to flow through this resistance. So if it is open circuit, the current cannot flow if there was no resistance. There was no path allowed at all. So if the source was like this, so in practical there is an internal resistance, internal conductance we say, because we draw it in parallel with the current source. And that one, even if this is left open, still this current flows through this parallel path, which is a conductance, and the current is still maintained whatever the value is. If it is I, the current will still be I. So these two are the independent sources which I have talked about. Now let's go to the dependent sources category, and there we can have four kind of dependent sources. So VCVS, which is actually voltage controlled voltage source. Then we can have current controlled voltage source. Then we can have voltage controlled current source and current controlled current source. So this is something like this in a circuit. Let's say we have a circuit like this. This one, there is an element, there is another element here, and then maybe here we have a, let's say, current controlled voltage source. So that's current controlled Vs. So the source is a voltage source, but this one's, the value of that one is controlled by a current through current of one of the branches here. So let's say the current in this branch is IA. So the value of the voltage source can be 10 IA volts. So it has an IA here because the IA is the controlling current, but it's still a voltage source. That's a current controlled voltage source. Similarly, we could have a voltage controlled voltage source. Let's say this, maybe we had something else here, let's say, and then maybe this voltage was VA, and if we had a voltage controlled voltage source which was, let's say, 20 VA, that would mean that this is the voltage control voltage, and that is controlling the voltage of this element, and that would be 20 VA. This symbol would still be like that. So this is the voltage source, voltage control voltage source or current control voltage source, and this is a current source, which can be voltage controlled current source or current controlled current source. The source is a current source, but its value can be defined by the current of another branch or by the voltage across another branch. So we can have a similar scenario. I won't draw that, but I hope it's understandable that we could have a current source here, and the current of that, the value of the current, then we would have the symbol like this, or downwards. The arrow could be downwards as well, depending on the direction, but the value could be, let's say, 10A again, which would be a current control current source, and the current control current would be this, or it could be, let's say, 20 VA or 15 VA. Then it would be voltage control current source, and the controlled voltage will be this one. So these are the basic of dependent and independent sources, and of course we need to look into more. We need to look into some problems to understand the whole thing, but this is just a small introduction, I would say.